15-foot fireballs coming off of it.
The thing was a disaster.
Neck and neck.
Headed out for another SNOWCAT adventure.
Gonna do a little bit camping and then have fun with a buddy for his birthday.
Yep, so join us, and along the journey we'll tell you how we got our SNOWCAT for $350.
And how we built it.
You excited to go snowcatting? What about you, Chief? I think so. This story begins about 8 years ago. Before we had this truck, or the trailer, or the SNOWCAT, we were hanging out with a friend who had gotten into SNOWCATs before we did, fortunately, and we had spent some time going cat skiing with him. This is where it all started, at this gas station right here at Downeyville, Colorado. We had stopped for some gas on our way to SNOWCAT skiing with our friend. I had gone inside and grabbed some snacks. This interesting character approached me and said, hey, I've got a machine just like this. It doesn't run, but it could be good for parts or scrap, and I'd be interested in selling it if you guys would be interested. My friend had just done a motor swap in his, and his tracks and the body were all in pretty good shape. So I told him we probably weren't interested, and I came back to the truck. When I got back to the truck, I had told the story to Justin here. First thing he asked me was,
Did you get the number?
Of course, I didn't get the number because it sounded like trash to me. We rushed back and found the guy and got his number there.
After we got the guy's number, we went snowcatting and had a great trip. About a week later or so, we got in contact with the guy and he let us know some really bad news. He had already promised the SNOWCAT to one of his cousins or something along those lines, so we were heartbroken that we probably weren't going to get the SNOWCAT now.
After we got the news that he had promised it to somebody else, which he failed to mention the first time, we kind of wrote it off.
After a while, we checked back in with him because we weren't 100% sure if he actually gave it to his cousin or not.
I think we found a pretty nice spot to camp for the night. Bring this old dead tree down for some firewood. Clean up the forest while we're at it. Finally, we heard back from the guy and we lined up the trailer and another friend with the truck, and we went to go check it out.
When we got there, it was quite bad. There was junk piled up all over it. It was burned to a crisp.
The guy that owned it told us that originally it actually did run and worked. He was trying to sell it and the prospective buyers couldn't get it to start, so they pulled the spark plugs out. They left them connected to the distributor and they turned it over. It sparked. Fuel came out of the cylinders and it burned until there was no fuel left.
Yeah, all the aluminum was like completely melted down. The fiberglass was all a real mess. What did he say? It
Probably an exaggeration,
it,
but yeah, probably
wow.
15-foot fireballs coming off of it.
The thing was a disaster, and we weren't even sure if we could get it to move, let alone get it to load on the trailer that we had brought. We decided, you know what, we're gonna buy this thing, even though most sane people would send it to the scrap.
So we managed to get it on the trailer at the guy's house. It was a struggle, kind of just drug on there. And we took it home and we ended up hooking it up to a tree, just dragging it straight off the trailer.
That was how we got our $350 SNOWCAT. There's obviously more to the story, and we'll be glad to tell it to you, but we got to get to cooking some dinner, so we'll continue on in a little bit.
Bit of an update here. Fire's roasting, SNOWCAT is staying warm. We are cooking. Decided we're gonna do a little experimentation and see how Hamburger Helper works in the backcountry. Yep, we pre-mixed our milk and water up so we don't have to deal with that. I know the dogs are pretty excited about it. Well,
Ooh, dinner.
looks like it turned out pretty good. All right, we finished up with dinner, so we're gonna go for a little night cruise. Probably. I bet we can at least follow these snowmobile tracks up. Yeah, up and around these trees. As you can see, the seats transform into deluxe sleeping. We had dragged it off the trailer into our yard. We were contemplating what to do with it at that point. Pretty immediately, we just got to work stripping it down.
Really, the only thing salvageable was a few track parts, the tub and the differential.
Torsion axles and some bogey wheels and tires, but yeah, pretty much just like the lower skeleton almost. One of the first things that we decided to do was open the differential.
We knew we wanted to re-gear it for more top speed.
At that point in time, we didn't know how to do gears, so we outsourced it.
While it was open, we had the steering bands redone, which didn't work so well because they were 100% Kevlar and just didn't steer very well.
And then we decided that we were going to throw a Jeep Cherokee drivetrain into it if we could, because we're pretty familiar with the Jeep 4-liter. We then cut the main frame and stretched it about 2 feet for a little more flotation because we had to rebuild the tracks anyway. They were toast. We knew we wanted to increase the payload. The original seating was a max of 3, and we knew we wanted 6 preferably if we could make it happen. Justin got a couple pieces bent up on the brake
in the shape of the tubs,
braced it up with some angle iron to make sure that it was all square, and then put the piece in the gap that we had created basically. At that point, once we got the stretch piece put in there, then we went ahead and stripped all the old paint off the frame and repainted it and threw the drivetrain in there. Almost fit just perfectly with that extra stretch we did.
Cut in a little hole in the side of the tub so we could leave the transfer case in there and just let it sit out the side just a little bit in between the tracks.
Low range and high range.
So the other thing we wanted to take from the Jeep Cherokee was the dash. So we took that and figured out how to mount it into the SNOWCAT tub. The next thing we moved on to were the seats. We knew a couple of things. We didn't want to sit on the floor, and we wanted to fit a few more people than the original design. The last thing we wanted was to turn it into a bed.
After that, we started building the cab. We wanted a bunch of visibility, so we surrounded ourselves by a lot of windows.
To build the cab, we used 1-inch 120 wall tubing for the main frame. Then we put aluminum on the outside. I believe it's 040, and we used double stick tape, so we used minimum rivets. And then we insulated and carpeted all the walls and roof from the inside. We added all of our lights on the inside so you can see at night.
Once we had that all built, we had some friends help us lift it up onto the lower half of it. We painted the body before we put it on. Once we got the body on, finished installing all the windows. We did it without the windows to make it a little less risky and less heavy. And then made the outer rake bar for it. That yellow bar there. Keep tree branches off our window and whatnot. When we stretched it is we actually added this extra bogey wheel and torsion axle into the system here to help with our increased payload. We had to find some extra grousers and make some extra track guides as we mentioned in our other video. But what we also needed was to find some belting. So we went and got ourselves some 3-ply. It's either Plylon Plus or Pathfinder from Applied Rubber down there in Denver. We got to work dismantling the old tracks, which was a real struggle because some of the bolts were rusted and messed up from the fire. So we ended up cutting a bunch of them off.
Then we started drilling the 880 holes in the rubber.
After that, we reassembled the tracks and put them on the SNOWCAT. So at this point, we had basically
Gotten the SNOWCAT all back together. Thought we were ready to go.
we had no truck and no trailer, but we had the SNOWCAT where we thought that it was ready for a test run.
So our buddy Sean came and picked it up for us for the test run and took it to this exact same spot.
Yep. So we almost made it up to this meadow. We were having a really hard time steering.
As we were about to crest the final hill to this meadow, our steering rod broke right off.
That was a real disaster because the local cat skiing operation was making their way out and we were blocking the trail. We got it home, we got the steering bar welded back on. We decided to get some different brake bands because the 100% Kevlar instead of a 70-30 mix was just not turning.
Then we took it for a couple more test drives.
And we decided that we were ready to go to the Colorado SNOWCAT Jamboree, even though we still had no truck or trailer. Looks like our friends showed up, some of them anyway. Now that we met up with our friends, it's time to convert the SNOWCAT back to driving mode. And just like that, we are back to driving mode. Pretty slick little setup. So we talked one of our friends into joining along with his truck to tow the SNOWCAT, and we looked into renting a trailer. Our buddy picked it up and raced up to our house. We got it all loaded up. Just ripped up that hill. First gear, 4,000 RPM. Hell yeah. And we started getting everything packed for the Jamboree because it was a multiple day event. Getting to the event, it was just to be the three of us as well as our two dogs. And with dogs, it was going to be kind of cramped. Basically, we had the cargo net inside to store all of our gear, and that was about it. We also invited some other people as well. Told everybody to pack light because we didn't have a lot of storage room. We ended up putting a bunch of stuff on the roof. Once we got out there, we started going out knowing that we were gonna have to try to get our other friend there at some point later, basically at the end of the day. Everything was going pretty good. We were making good speed. We got up to the Jamboree site without too much issue. I think we overheated once on the way up the hill. Stopped and let it cool down. It was no big deal. So we got to the Jamboree site. It was kind of a record snow for the Jamboree. At that point in time, we had just gotten 2-3 foot storms, so we rolled up on like 6 feet of snow, which was pretty awesome. Picked out a site, unloaded all of our gear, started kind of getting a platform going for our sleeping setup, and then we worked on trying to get a ride for our friends so that they could join us 3 miles out, so we didn't really feel like driving all the way back to the truck, considering it was still a pretty early run on the SNOWCAT. We hadn't gotten it out but maybe 3 or 4 times prior to this. We managed to find somebody that would help us out. Our additional friends didn't have sleeping in the SNOWCAT, obviously, because we didn't have any room for more than 3, but the plan was that they were going to dig a snow cave and sleep in that. They showed up and they started digging their snow cave. Unknown to me at that point in time, 2 of the guys in our group had never slept in a snow cave before, so it was really cool to be able to share the experience with them, as well as our friend's daughter, who had never slept in one either, because she got to join us for this trip as well. We did not have a diesel heater for the SNOWCAT at that point in time, so I think we probably woke up and started it maybe once throughout the night, but unfortunately we had some electronics plugged in that drained our battery, so when we woke up in the morning, we went to start the SNOWCAT to warm it up, and it just clicked. The battery was dead, which was a real bummer to our friends that were sleeping in a snow cave as well, because they woke up and they wanted to get warm, just as we did, because the whole inside of the SNOWCAT had frosted over at that point. It was a pretty cold night, and nobody could get warm. Fortunately for us, the hill climb had taken place the day before, and one of our other friends' SNOWCATs had gotten stuck and left overnight. We quickly pilfered that battery and jump-started our SNOWCAT and got warmth going for everybody, which was great. We enjoyed the winter wonderland, had some breakfast, and our friend with the truck needed to be back because it was a rented trailer and that had to be back by a certain point in time, so we started thinking about getting out of there. But we had cruised the SNOWCAT around quite a bit up until that point. We had enjoyed it a lot. It was really fun in the deep snow, but we had noticed something wasn't quite right. We were kind of a little bit worried about making it back to the truck down the hill. What we had discovered is going downhill, if you let your foot off the gas, it would kind of make a grinding noise and have a lot of resistance like you were pushing the brakes. We were pretty concerned something was a little funky in the differential. We slowly limped it out of there as carefully as we could, just crossing our fingers that we didn't blow up on the way to the truck. Fortunately, we made it out, but that was the end of our first SNOWCAT Jamboree. So once we got back home, we actually learned that we also had won third best in show at the Jamboree. That was a pretty good little highlight to end that season on. The following year, we still didn't have a truck or trailer, so that definitely put a hamper on things. We basically got ourselves in the market for them real quick because you can't own a SNOWCAT and not have a way to get it around. We found ourselves an old early 99 7.3 F350. We knew that it needed at least a transmission. We got it under a bonded title, had to jump through a bunch of hoops with the state, went through the fuel system, rebuilt the turbo, and we ripped the transmission out and sent it down to get rebuilt. Got it back in the truck, ended up finding a trailer, 16-foot gooseneck, but it was like a converted RV or something, so we ended up getting that thing and rebuilding it. Got all that rebuilt, redecked.
That was fun. That thing basically drove itself down.
And we thought we were on our way to the second Jamboree after that, right? We loaded up and we were heading to the second Jamboree. On the way there, we were not real happy with how the truck was performing. The transmission seemed to be acting a little bit funny. So we unloaded at Gray's and Torrey's trailhead there and we took it up the trailhead to the turnoff to Grizzly Gulch. We had a bunch of difficulty steering, and that rough condition in the differential still persisted from when we discovered it at the first Jamboree. So we turned around and we started making our way back home, and we were sure we were going in the differential after that. Got her loaded back up, made our way back home, and about 200 to 500 feet from our driveway, the transmission of the truck locked up in the middle of the road, and we couldn't move it anywhere, so we had left it there for the night, came back, took the drive shaft off, towed it home. I think at that point we started tearing it apart again. We decided we needed new brake bands for the steering because we still couldn't steer for crap. Knew we needed to get into the differential and see what was going on in there because it was not acting proper either. Anyway, we opened up the differential. We realized that the ring and pinion that we had swapped in there was toast. We had gotten some bad gears. We got the gears out. They were under warranty. We got new gears, and before we installed them, we did some more research about how the inner workings of the differential worked. We had learned that the inner planetary gears actually are timed, so they need to be put together in a specific way so that they mesh up properly. Pretty sure they weren't. Ended up finding some wear on the inner planetary gears, and so we decided that we were going to replace those as well. Those are not the cheapest, but it's definitely cheaper than a full-blown exploded differential. We got the new planetary gears installed. They were all timed properly, and then we put the new ring and pinion on with the new steering bands and got it out for some more test runs.
Pretty nice in general, man.
A lot better than it was.
This seemed to make a huge difference. We were very happy when we got it out and started testing it. But I guess before that happened, we got the transmission on the truck rebuilt, which was a giant fiasco for the second time because it was under warranty. About that same time, we decided we needed more storage, and we were going to make a bed for the back of it to cover the motor, and we bought a TIG welder, taught ourselves how to TIG weld using YouTube University. A friend came over and gave us some pointers, and I think that gets us to our third Jamboree. I don't recall exactly the order of operations. We got the transmission back in the truck after having everything flushed out. We wanted a tuner and decided maybe a bigger turbo and some new injectors were needed, so we did all of that coming into the third Jamboree. Last minute, we were getting the air out of the injection system of the truck the night before we had to leave, running at 60 plus hard miles, full throttle. in the newfound race truck.
After that, we were pretty happy with how the truck was running, so it was time to load up the SNOWCAT and head out to the third SNOWCAT Jamboree. This year we had to park on the opposite side of Vail Pass on Camp Hale side, which doubled our trip out there and also doubled the trip into Vail Pass to the SNOWCAT Jamboree site. This time it was just Jason, me, and our buddy Nathan. Left our dogs at home. Ended up making it up there really smoothly. It was a blizzard the whole time getting out there. So we unloaded once we got Camp Hale, did a little snow bashing around the parking lot area, and then established somewhere to camp. This was the first time we had a diesel heater, so we were pretty stoked.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Hey! Blow out! Get it
Camping went well. Diesel heater was a little finicky. We just kept having to restart it, but when it worked, it was really good. So the next morning, we got it all fired back up. Everything was good, and we made our way up the 7 miles to the Jamboree spot. On the way, I dropped Jason and Nathan off to get a run on Machine Gun Ridge. Well, up there, we ran into our other buddy and chatted with him for a while. Unfortunately, left the SNOWCAT running and didn't think I was that low on fuel, but it ran out of gas, so had to try to put more gas in there on the side of the hill, so that was fun. The bed came in clutch right there because we were able to bring more gas, and so we just grabbed it out of the bed and poured it in, and we were off to the Jamboree location. So we unloaded there most of the stuff and then did some more snowcatting and snowboarding for the rest of the afternoon. Got back, set up camp with a bunch of other people that were camping up there this time. Unlike the first Jamboree where we were basically the only ones. A few broken snowcats, they were strewn out along the hill. Somebody brought a covered trailer up on skis and they had a fireplace in there, so that was cool. Kind of indoor fireplace, and there was also a fire outside of it. Plenty of warmth to be had around.
It was a really clear night that night, and I've always wanted to get an awesome night tracked Milky Way shot with the SNOWCAT, and so I finally had the opportunity and I took it. That was really awesome highlight to that year for me.
As Jason was taking his picture, Nathan and I set the cat up for sleep mode and settled in for the night. The next day was the Jamboree day. About 35 cats or so showed up. There was some hill climbing and then just everybody hanging out, checking out the other cats, got some more snowboarding in, and just had a good old time. During the Jamboree, our buddy that we met the previous season randomly at one of our local spots came and adjusted our diesel heater, so it worked really good on the third night, and it turns out he's basically a neighbor of ours. The next day was time to get out of there. We started to leave, then we had to help somebody with their broken cat to get it running to get out of there. There was a couple other cats that were kind of on the fritz, so we ran a caravan out and made sure everybody got out safely, and everybody did. After the Jamboree, we were getting pretty confident with the SNOWCAT and its abilities, so we were getting out a bit more, had to go rescue a different SNOWCAT up the hill from us, and then we got a pretty good snowstorm and decided we were going to try to make it as far through our yard as we could, which turned out to be a really bad idea because we had low tire pressure and loose tracks, so it ended up starfishing a wheel, breaking a tensioner, a bunch of guides, ripping the track off. Happened to be on a side hill in the trees, so kind of about the worst place to be working on it. So that was fun.
The following year, we went to the Jamboree again. We had discovered that our radiator had a leak before the Jamboree, maybe 3 days before the Jamboree, and we couldn't get one locally. We ended up getting it overnighted from Summit and getting it thrown in like last minute as per usual before this Jamboree. It was just the two of us, the dogs, and our buddy that lives nearby had built a tiny home on skis that he trailered up to the Jamboree that year, which was pretty cool. As we were pulling into the Jamboree site that first day, there was a few cats that had gotten there before us, and some of them had left some trenched out tracks on a little bit of a side hill. We were following some tracks into the Jamboree site and ended up kind of in between, like one of our tracks was in their track and the other track was on the uphill side between their two tracks, so we were tilted super hard downhill. At that moment, because all the gas was forced to the side of the tank, we ended up running out of gas in front of a bunch of people right as we were rolling into the Jamboree site, super sideways. People are like, oh, do we need to help you? And we're like, no, you know, we just ran out of gas. It's not that big of a deal. We just need to get some gas in it. Although it was a little tough to get some gas in it while it was super sideways. Somebody insisted on coming up and helping because they had a blade, so they kind of bladed the area, rounded out. And we had some guys were hanging off the side of the SNOWCAT on the uphill side trying to level it out so we could get gas in it and get it to fire back up and drive out of there. So that was kind of eventful. Our buddy that brought a tiny home, he also did like a bunch of homemade wood-fired pizzas one of the nights that we were up there. They had a drag race and a hill climb as usual, but the drag race was kind of a new thing, so we signed up. Didn't really know how we were going to do, but we did build our cat for top speed in mind, so we were kind of curious to see how we held up.
For the drag race, we had a couple heats. We ended up winning our heats and made it to the final. We were up against nitrous powered Tucker and a turbo diesel piston bully Scout. Quite the lineup to race against. It was time to race. When the hand dropped, I just left it pinned. We got the early lead. The nitrous Tucker was catching on our heels pretty quickly.
Drag race. Tucker's coming. Who's still ahead of him?
Got to the slope of the hill and our transmission started hunting between second and third, so we were really losing a lot of speed there. But as we crested the hill, we looked over and the nitrous Tucker was just a little bit behind us, so we ended up winning the race.
So the rest of the Jamboree went fairly uneventful, pretty normal, except for on the way home, the highway seemed to be closed down. The roads were pretty treacherous, so it was an adventure getting back home. It definitely took a long time. And that was pretty much the highlight of that year. Ever since then, we've been getting the SNOWCAT out as much as we can, and it's been pretty reliable for us, fortunately. We were losing some track guides at one point because we were snapping some bolts, so we ended up stripping the tracks back down to nothing and replacing all the hardware with some grade 8 bolts. And we also decided we wanted to do some button shifters after that drag race, just so that we could have more control over our shifting from now on. And that pretty much gets us caught up to where we're at now. You guys can check out all of our other videos of the adventures that we've done since we started our YouTube channel, and that'll give you a pretty good feel for what it's like and what we do with it. Sorry we ended up voicing over some of this. It's been quite the project and story to tell, but we appreciate you sticking around and listening to it, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask in the comments. We'll also include a link in the description from the write-up of the original build that we did, because we're fairly good about keeping up on that. So if there's some stuff we missed, you can probably find out about it in there as well. But yeah, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.